The devastation is so severe across such an expanse that we still don't know the toll of the southern and midwestern tornadoes. Starting the night of December 10th, at least 59 twisters carved through 10 states, a swarm you wouldn't expect 2 weeks before winter. We spent the last several days in Kentucky, where it was still strangely warm, and questions of climate change are being asked. The answers aren't clear, but we do know what we saw is rare. The storm threw down one twister that cut a path of destruction of more than 165 miles. One meteorologist we talked with called that tornado the Beast.
The story will continue in a moment.
All that rises from a leveled landscape are bonfires of memories. On the Rickard farm in western Kentucky, they burn what they can't save from the 2-story brick home that seemed unshakable on that foundation down there on the right, and the garage by its side.
It sounded like 10 trains on a track coming towards you full speed.
Your neighbor shot a video of the tornado.
Their neighbor turned his phone toward the Rickard cattle farm and framed lightning, catching history.
Been viewed many times on Facebook, I believe. That video is basically as it's hitting our farm.
That's the Beast, a mile wide, spinning counterclockwise around 190 miles an hour. Sean and Mindy Rickard bolted for a church.
Why did you go to the church? Why not stay in your brick home?
I guess the good Lord told us to leave, and we left. He was taking care of us. I can't tell you other than that. I don't know.
Seems likely, had they stayed, they would have been among at least 90 dead. No one remains missing.
It was a beast of a storm. It was big, it was persistent, and it wasn't going to stop. Nothing's going to stop this thing.
Hours before the storm, Pat Spoden was already worried. The 73-degree day his neighbors enjoyed made his stomach churn.
And I've been doing this for 34 years. You have that gut feeling like, this is not good. It's not going to be a good day.
It was too warm for December. Spoden was working that night at the Weather Service in Paducah, Kentucky, where he dreaded these images of the storm. Where red meets green, there is rotation, but what caught his eye was an area of high density in the sky. It was debris, trees and homes and lives spiraling to astounding heights.
And it was up to 20 and 30,000 feet.
The debris was reaching 30,000 feet, about where airliners fly.
Yes.
On the screen, Spoden saw the twister close in. He knew the tiny word Mayfield meant 10,000 people. He typed the first tornado emergency alert in his career.
I remember saying, I can't spell Mayfield because I'm nervous. I know what's going on and what is at stake.
Tornado watches and warnings had been buzzing phones all day, but after 9:26 p.m., the Weather Service sent its final warning, startling words in digital deadpan.
You are in a life-threatening situation. Mobile homes will be destroyed. Considerable damage to homes, businesses, and vehicles is likely, and complete destruction is possible.
It was nearly complete destruction in half of Mayfield, Kentucky. This is where the Mayfield Consumer Products candle factory was destroyed. The company says 8 died, but more than 100 survived. They had a 22-minute warning, the time to take cover. Just 90 miles north of Mayfield, and nearly 100 years ago, the record for the longest tornado path ever was set in the spring of 1925. Before radar and warnings, nearly 700 were killed along a stretch of 219 miles. Back then, government forecasters were not allowed to use the word tornado. The term was considered too frightening, the phenomenon too poorly understood.
You need to look at other debris in the area, nearby debris, and see if damage is uniform or...
Karen Kosiba is a leading scientist who has studied tornadoes for 16 years. Her work at the University of Illinois uses sophisticated radar trucks to scan tornadoes up close and in unprecedented detail. What are the big questions you would like to answer about tornadoes?
Some of it is the very basic question of why some storms will go on to produce a tornado and some storms won't, even though they look identical on radar, they look identical to the eye, they look identical in models. Also, what intensity a tornado is going to be. We don't really have any predictive power about how intense that tornado is going to be or how long it's going to last.
The United States has by far more tornadoes than any place else on Earth, and I wonder why that is.
Because it has either, I'll say, lucky or unlucky geography. We have the Gulf of Mexico, which is an ample source of moisture that helps bring in warm, moist air at low levels. We have the Rocky Mountains, which adds a nice cool layer up at sort of mid-levels. And what that does is that gives you an unstable atmosphere as these systems move through.
This happened on a 73-degree day
Right.
in December. And I wonder, what effect does climate change have on this?
Certainly, we know that our climate is warming, but how that actually manifests itself into tornado outbreaks or tornado intensity or tornado location is difficult to determine. There's a lot of research going on. There are indications that potentially the tornado threat's moving farther east than it normally is, or that it might be occurring later in the year during these cool seasons, so these November, December, January, February, that might be more prolific for tornadoes than previously.
But the effect of climate change is unclear. Tornado formation is fleeting, complex, and not completely understood. 2020, for example, was one of the 3 hottest years on record, and it was an off year for tornadoes. There's a lot we don't know about climate change and the weather.
But there's a lot of research being done trying to figure out what's happening with climate change and the weather. And really, I mean, there's no indication that any of these things are going to go away. So I think it's really what needs to be the focus is being prepared for these types of events.
Preparation, adequate warning, is no longer the problem. The Weather Service gets it right nearly 90% of the time. On this hillside of mostly mobile homes, residents knew it was coming, but there was no place to hide. James Pendley threw himself on top of his son.
I knew things were going to start flying, so I decided that my son needed to be shielded because he's only 20 and I'm in my 50s, so I figure 2 choices here, him or me, and I figure he'd be the one that needs to make it through this.
You'd lived your life.
I've lived it. I've had 35 good years with her, and I figured if anybody needed to make it, it was going to be him.
Timmy Vinoy came to check the hill for his aunt and uncle. He found most every home destroyed amid shouts of missing children.
Over here, over here.
Hold on. You know, of course, it was pitch black, and a few of the deputies and me, we had flashlights, but that didn't help much.
329, can you get down here? We need help. We got someone under this debris.
He searched with 2 sheriff's deputies who were wearing cameras.
Hey, hang on.
We're looking for a 15-month-old.
And so we moved all the debris off the Shire, and we lifted the Shire up, and there the little 15-month-old was laying there crying, a little boy.
Hey, baby.
Deputies Trent Arnold and Troy Blue delivered the boy into the world again.
Hey, baby.
Hey, oh my God! Don't move easy. Hey, move easy. Get that one out. Move it easy.
Good deal.
And over to the side of it was they had a little 3-month-old. That was he was up and under all the debris, laying on his belly.
Come on, baby. Both of them.
Those children,
Both of them are okay, man.
Oh, praise God!
everyone on the hill, survived.
Just get in the car with him. Here's the little one.
Yeah.
Right here.
You see where it just broke off the rebar here.
Yeah, so that
Just snapped it like a toothpick.
This week, the path, power, and duration of the beast are being measured by teams including the Weather Service's Pat Spoden, Christine Welgus, and Steve Eddy. It's estimated 15,000 buildings were shredded across the region at a cost of $3.5 billion.
The interesting point of this thing being lofted up the hill and what kind of energy it took to lift it.
What impressed them were the scattered rail cars, tossed and capsized. Tank cars were flared to burn off the remains of their combustible cargo.
Normally, that'd be a great place to be, and you'd got crushed here.
Steve Eddy was amazed that this University of Kentucky building couldn't stand up to the fight.
That's where I would have told people to go in and seek shelter.
Because it was so well built.
It was only 18 months old.
Eddy and Christine Welgus told us that even with their radar and supercomputers, the most accurate way to measure the power of a tornado is by appraising what is left behind.
The day after the event, I was able to take a ride in a helicopter, and we flew the entire path. When the helicopter kept going and I kept seeing damage and I kept seeing trees down, I'm like, this isn't going to end.
We're talking about 1 to 2% of the tornadoes that occur. 98% of them are on the ground for about a minute and are about 100 feet wide. Very short, brief is a normal tornado. Wind speeds 70, 80 miles an hour maximum usually.
How is this different?
Abnormally in the very high range. Yeah, historic, I like that word. Historic event.
This is hot pepper jelly.
Her brick home destroyed, Mindy Rickard found jelly she canned in a glass ball jar. Another memory from what has already been a long life with her husband, Sean. They met when they were 4 years old.
What have you found that has meant something to you?
I'll let you take that one.
So, as a family, we had 3 children, Chloe, Chase, and Caleb. And in 2011, our youngest, Caleb, passed away in a tragic swimming pool accident.
I'm so sorry.
There was a blanket that all 3 of my kids used. We used it with all 3 of them, but Caleb was the one who just really seemed to latch on to that blanket, and he packed it with him everywhere he went.
Caleb's blanket was found by a friend about 150 yards away, somehow still folded. The Rickards plan to rebuild on the old foundation. The bonfire will not erase the history of the family's 3 generations on this hill. Roots that not even a storm called the Beast could sever.